The Pilbara will be recast as a titan of both mining and low-emissions manufacturing through a $1.5 billion funding injection set to pave the way for a new chapter for the engine room of the Australian economy. In today's federal budget, WA's north has been identified as one of 4 next-generation export hubs, with Commonwealth money earmarked for significant port upgrades in Port Hedland, improving both import and export capability, the sealing of Tanami Road, and an overhauled electricity grid. Some $400 million will be spent increasing onshore processing of iron, or with a view towards establishing low-emission steel production, as well as other manufacturing industries relying on hydrogen or ammonia as a fuel source. Don't miss 16-page special budget wrap with Wednesday's edition of the West Australian. The investment seeks to entrench green energy as the next frontier for a Pilbara region that's natural gas and iron ore reserves have been a major driver of national wealth for decades. But in a first, renewably produced hydrogen and ammonia would both be loaded directly onto ships for transport to Asia and also power homegrown manufacturing plants. The regional cash splash, part of a wider $7.1 billion spend through a new energy security and regional development plan, was the only big-ticket budget item specific to WA not already announced by Prime Minister Scott Morrison during 2 visits to the state in the past month. Your cookie settings are preventing this third-party content from displaying. If you'd like to view this content, please adjust your cookie settings. To find out more about how we use cookies, please see our cookie guide. But beyond flashy funding announcements, the budget heralds a significant boom period for WA, with mining investment tipped to jump 9.5% in 2022-23, reaching its highest level in 6 years. Net overseas migration is also forecast to hit 41,000 in the current financial year, a remarkable turnaround from the mid-year economic and fiscal outlook when it was expected Australia would instead lose 41,000 people over that period. With the floodgates apparently open, net migration is expected to reach 180,000 next year and 213,000 in 2023-24. Camera icon Treasurer Josh Frydenberg has handed down a big spending budget ahead of the federal election. AAP. That will provide a significant influx of workers, especially workers, to an economy that has spent the past 2 years cannibalizing a constrained labor force. How that impacts wages growth, which has been penciled in at a rosy 3.25 to 3.5% annually for the next 4 years, remains a big unknown. As Labour leader Anthony Albanese was at pains to point out pre-budget, the coalition had made a habit of over its wages predictions. In some potentially unpalatable news for West Australians in the midst of their first real COVID experience, Treasury assumes a further Omicron wave during winter, which may again see elevated rates of absenteeism and pressure on supply chains. After that, the country will continue to experience intermittent, localized waves of Omicron or other new variants, but high vaccination rates and improved medical treatments are expected to reduce the impact of future outbreaks, with national borders to remain open at all times. It is assumed that public health measures such as physical distancing and density restrictions are phased down, but reimposed in a targeted way in response to future COVID-19 outbreaks, the budget said. Prior WA commitments were headlined by a $4.3 billion large vessel dry dock at Henderson and $2.1 billion in additional infrastructure funding for both Metronet and a raft of road projects. A new specialist cancer centre at QEII received a $375 million pledge, although the facility is yet to be signed off by Premier Mark McGowan, who would be required to tip in the same amount. Relatively modest top-ups to the Perth City deal to offset rapidly escalating steel and labour costs have taken the total value of the transformative project, which includes a new CBD university campus and Swan River Bridge, to $1.69 billion. The Morrison government's Modern Manufacturing Fund will also pour $119.6 million into a battery material refinery hub near Kalgoorlie and $49 million into a vanadium processing operation. Just over $36 million will also be spent funding 2 new university departments supporting medical training in the Southwest and Goldfields regions. Tuesday's budget did reveal an additional year of funding for the custody notification services introduced in the wake of the Ms. which ensures the Aboriginal Legal Service is notified each time an Indigenous person is arrested. A $1.2 billion contingent liability remains as a carrot for the first WA government willing to construct the Row 8 and 9 extensions, despite Mr McGowan legislating to permanently remove the road reserve through the Beelaya wetlands.